Hello, good afternoon. Valerie Milano, the senior editor of the Hollywood Times. I'm here in Palm Springs, California, and I'm so happy to have our guests talking about their film. I'm going to have them introduce themselves. Thank you again for joining us.
Yeah, hi, I'm Rachna Khatau. I'm one of the producers on Welcome to Toolshed, and thank you for having us.
Andrew, you want to go first?
I'm Andrew Klaus-Vineyard. I'm a co-director on Welcome to Toolshed, and I'm also here in Los Angeles. I'm in Hollywood, so yeah.
I'm Daniel Talbot. I am the other director of Welcome to Toolshed. I'm in Los Feliz, so one of your neighbors. My
Yes,
grandmother lives in Palm Springs, and she's amazing. So I have to shout her out.
sweet. Yeah, Palm Springs is an amazing place.
Sure.
Thank you, the three of you, for joining us again. So, I'm sure you've been asked this many times. What first brought the three of you to the tool shed, and when did you realize its community needed to be documented?
I think how it started, I mean, first of all, was wanting to work with Rachna and also Andrew because they're dear friends and they're people I respect so much and love so much. So it's also like always trying to find projects with people you love is such a joy and such a balm for your heart in this industry. And then it started with Larry Kramer, who was a really, really dear friend and someone who was a mentor and like someone I considered family and I love very much. And when he passed, it was during the pandemic and he was on the East Coast and I was here. So I got to meet some of his ACT UP friends who had lived out here who I knew his New York friends, but I didn't know his West Coast friends. And they just kept talking about this bar. This bar just kept popping up, and we're not part of the leather community, but this bar just kept popping up. So when I went to visit my grandma the next time, I was like, I need to find this bar. So I just checked it out by myself, and I just instantly, first of all, the first thing that greeted me was dogs, which I just love. I love that there are dogs in the bar. I know there's not supposed to be, but Robert gladly pays the fines, and so I remember going, oh my God, okay, this is a bar with dogs, and it's a gay bar. I love this. And so it was to honor Larry. But honestly, I feel like it's almost like we needed it to be told as like young queer people. Rachna is not queer, but an amazing ally. But like Andrew and I think we're both going like with everything going on in the country right now, it was so amazing to have them tell us their stories. It was like, oh, we're gonna make it through this, you know what I mean? And to learn from our elders and people who had fought so much harder than we're having to fight right now. I felt like we needed it. Like they didn't need it, we needed it. So it was very kind of them to give it to us. So yeah.
Does anybody
Yeah,
else
I
want
think
to chime in?
yeah, I would say too, like and this is sort of what I always say, that is that we have our first generation of openly queer senior citizens who, because of HIV and AIDS, never thought they would get to live to be senior citizens. So and queer history is something that isn't archived and documented as properly as other histories. It's passed lover to lover and friend group to friend group, and we're losing that kind of vital information, that kind of institutional information. And they are not just the blueprint for how we age as a community, but like they are an example of how we meet this moment we're in politically because of having to survive the Reagan Thatcher years, the Bush years. They are how we meet, fascism every day. And so I thought it's really important to to be able to capture these stories and hopefully inspire some people. We've said it's a love letter, but I think it's also like an alarm call, like a call to arms, and that's what I really hope it becomes.
Yeah, just real quick, because I don't want to cut off Rachel and stuff, but like last night we showed a friend of ours, Sherry Golke's amazing documentary feature called Acting Like Women,
Oh, amazing.
talking about how things are not kept. And like all the tapes from the women's building were literally tossed to the ground and someone thought to recover them, which is how her documentary is around. It's incredible.
They were literally in the trash on the curb.
Yeah.
Oh,
And
terrible.
it's incredible. Everyone has to see her doc. It's called Acting Like Women.
Okay.
It's phenomenal.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you can hear the passion and the deep knowledge of, queer history that these two people have. And I met Andrew through Daniel. I met Daniel through this wonderful writer, Lena Patel, who I've gotten to work with several times. And Daniel was just telling me about this idea he had for a documentary, and I thought it sounded so many things. It felt so important, but it felt so interesting. It felt so joyful, like, this this group of senior citizens who are regulars at a leather daddy bar. I was like, that's amazing. And he goes, work with me on it. And I was like, yes, how can I support this story? How can I support your vision? And then going to the bar, meeting Robert, the bar owner, and having him be so open and vulnerable right away when we met him, and hearing the depth and breadth of his stories that he was willing to share with us felt like a real gift. And I was just very grateful and honored to support, all of them in having this story told, because I think as someone who's not part of the queer community, there's always an opportunity to listen and to learn from different groups of people, always. And whether or not you identify with them is irrelevant. They have stories to share. And if we just listen, we will learn something.
That's beautiful. Thank you for that. I know before we got on record, we talked about some uh, people that I recognized in the background, and just what a kind of small world it is, if you want to call it that. So it felt especially personal to me. How did you all build enough trust, if you want to call it that, for the people that were speaking to speak so openly on camera?
I think, first I think it started with it's why we built this kind of team to start with, because we all trust each other and have a lot of love for each other. So like, you wanted to find a group of people, a small group of people. First of all, we wanted to be very small. It was very, we had almost no money, but we wanted a very small, light footprint. We didn't want some, a bunch of cameras and lights and, because I think that that's really can be intimidating, and also just it doesn't help for intimacy in a way. And so, we wanted to be small, but then also, it started with Robert, and Robert made us work for it in a good way. And I mean, that was so much love and respect. Like he, loves the people and his patrons and like his community so freaking much. I mean, I don't think people know actually how much Robert puts in his own money into stuff that he's not getting financially returned for, like he's just a really incredible man, and I love him. But he made us work for like months for it, and we finally sat down and had lunch. And I think he was not convinced, which I actually, again, really respected. And I think because of some of the stuff that he talks about in the film, he was not convinced. And we had lunch, and he just was instantly vulnerable and instantly wonderful. And by the end of lunch, he was like, cool, I'm going to let you do this. And so him and Rio especially really introduced us to everybody. So I felt like we had like family introduce us to family, which is how we wanted it to be. And also I think why people spoke to us in a really open way, maybe.
You're talking about the people that are in the bar, that were in the bar for the film. Was it important to you to focus specifically on the older queer men and the role this bar has played as a sanctuary and chosen family? And on that note, how many of the younger people that frequent, what did they have to say?
I mean, I think chosen family and the older generation was like the the impetus for all of this, because we are, unfortunately, age is a thing, and we are all getting older, and death is a normal transitioning part of life. We wanted to capture those stories before they're gone, because it's so important to have a living history, a living testimonial. And I think those stories are so underrepresented. And I think even amongst queer filmmakers, a senior perspective is still like a rare thing to see. It's usually such a youth focused, storytelling. So it was really important to share, a senior perspective on things. I think with the younger people, I mean, the younger people who go there, I think they are still learning the privilege to get to be there. And I think John really says it really eloquently in the film that, if they aren't careful, places like that won't exist. And it's like, you never, I don't want it to be one of those things where, you don't know what you have until it's gone. And so I think this is like a real good reminder that, appreciate the world around you. And I think everyone is better having intergenerational relationships and knowing elder people. And I feel like there's less of that mixing now, because you know, we're all on our phones, we're all on social media, we're all siloed off digitally, and we don't have as many third spaces in the States, places where communities mix. And I think that's really important. And I think it's a real loss when we don't have those things.
Hugely.
You described the production as punk rock and guerrilla style, made with almost no money.
Truly.
How how did those limitations shape the look and the intimacy of the film?
I think you want I think I always want how a film looks to really honor character and heart and kind of the location that it's in. I think if we came in with a bunch of fancy stuff into what is really like it feels like a grassroots, like built up community bar, I think it would have been the wrong way to go about it. If it looked like an HBO doc, I think we would kind of dishonor the spirit of that bar. And so I think we were like, look, we don't have much, you don't have much, but what we have is each other and each other's stories. And so we wanted it to be raw. We mixed it with like we have this amazing DP and sound person, Pride, who lives out in the desert, who's just incredible. And so I think our sit down interviews were a bit, we lit them, we elevated them a bit in the cinematography, but like our footage of the bar, we wanted to feel like we just brought a camera in there and we're just capturing stuff. And I really love
Yeah.
that feel of it.
I think Pride and Daniel and Andrew did a really wonderful job of sort of disappearing. That place can get really crowded, but sometimes it's less so, like during the day. And once we had been there enough and gotten to know people well enough, they just sort of blended into the background. So they were capturing things that were just really, truly authentic to the space. There was no one felt uncomfortable. No one felt like they had to perform because there were cameras around. So what you're seeing in the doc is very authentically the energy of the space and of the people.
Yeah.
Yeah, on that note, this might be a really long answer, and that's okay if so. Was there one story, person, or moment during filmmaking that affected each of you most?
Oof.
We cried a lot on set. I'm not gonna lie. Like during the sit down interviews,
A lot
the
of
bar
crack.
stuff, you're just moving and it's fast and it's
Yeah.
so hot, so you're just trying to survive. But the sit down interviews, it like if Daniel was doing an interview, I would be off camera sobbing in another room. And then, if I was on camera, like I know Noel, who's that was or one of the other producers was like he was off camera like sobbing. So there were only five of us on set. So like we kept it small and shed a lot of tears.
Yeah.
Robert's Robert's interview, like it haunts me in the best possible way because he was so it's also just inspiring, honestly. And I thought about this recent because I just resaw the film. It's inspiring to see a man just be that open with their feelings, regardless of orientation. Just someone who can just have access to their feelings and be that vulnerable and make a plea on camera to the world to just be allowed to live, and that really has affected me deeply.
Yeah. Rachna, do you want to go?
Oh my gosh. I mean, all of them. I think Robert, yeah, is for me one of the ones because he sees everything and he does everything for the bar. And he's got such a big heart. And he cares so deeply about about his patrons. They're not just patrons to him. So, that piece of it, but also all his personal life and the journey that he went on, with his own family and things like that was really deeply moving. I will also say after Stefan's interview, he messaged Noelle and I like thanking us for the opportunity to tell his story. And we were like, no, thank you, for giving us, the gift of your story and for being so vulnerable. And so that sort of very immediate feedback that this was helpful to them and meant something to them in a way that we maybe didn't anticipate. We're like, they're sharing their story with us. And it was something that allowed them to remember things they hadn't thought about in a long time and process things. And we were like, what a gift. So getting that text was really meaningful as well.
Yeah, I'll say, I mean, and I know this is the worst type of answer, but it really is all of them because I think what what's so powerful, like what's really been hitting me in the last few years, and like we saw two films when we got to go to Cannes with this film. There were two incredible films at Cannes this year, Coward and La Bola Negra. And you're literally watching these incredible filmmakers stitch queer history back into the books it throughout through film and through character. And I felt that with our film, that like I was like, you feel so much less alone after spending 2 hours in that bar. Like, and I think you forget as a queer person how, and Andrew and I are like the most white passing, like, you know dude queer people on the planet, and so we have it much better than a lot of people have it already, but you still feel so alone all the time. And it's like, and when you walk, I left every night going like, oh my God, like there are people that had to fight so much harder and more quietly and more in the shadows. And it was such a reminder of their bravery, and also that there's a lot of us out there, and that we do have an incredible community that shows up and is family oriented, and that we're better together. And that's what I got out of it. But I want to especially shout out Bobby, because Bobby passed recently. And I think the first time we saw the show was at Palm Springs Short Fest, was since he had passed. And he was just such a freaking light and so funny. I mean, there's things we did not add that were just, he was so beautifully spunky and dirty in the best way. And like, and just such a man that profoundly loved people and also loved the people he had loved in his life. And those stuffed animals in the back of his car signify his family, basically, who had passed. And so I like, I could not get through the film on Monday night when he came on. I was like, so
Yeah.
shout out to Bobby, especially.
Yeah.
Daniel,
Yeah.
you
But
just go ahead. Go ahead.
oh no, I was say Monday night. Yeah,
Oh,
he makes a comment in the film about, he lists off the four of them, his family passing, and then he's like, and I just get by on memories. And I lost it at the table. I had like my hands were in my face, my face was in my hands, because I was like, oh, like it really, really hit me. Like, what a loss. What a wonderful.
it also hit me when you watch these people. I go like that there are people in this country that don't want to know these people because of their
Yeah.
sexual orientation. And I'm like, you guys, these are some of the most fascinating, well-read, versed, funny, heart, just heartfelt, genuine, loyal people you will ever meet. I'm like, why would you not want to know them because of who they make love with? Like, are you fucking kidding me? And like, so that was a huge thing. I also was just constantly reminded of that I'm like, you don't want to know our community? Like, look at our community and how extraordinary it is. And so that was also a big thing to me. I mean, you don't want to know Bobby? I mean, come on. You don't want to know Rio? Like, come on. Like, I was like, what's wrong with you people?
Well,
So,
you
you know.
said something a minute ago, and I want to touch on that. The film has traveled from Palm Springs to the American Pavilion at Cannes. What was the response like when international audiences encountered this very local queer community?
Oh
I,
my
I mean, we kind of thought we weren't sure if international audiences would take it because it's such an politically American focused doc, and we had the best response. I mean, it was so welcoming and so passionate, and and Cannes is a very strange, magical, chaotic place. That festival is wild, and but you're if you're lucky, you're surrounded like we were with people who love film and who are passionate about film and passionate about storytelling and really passionate about authenticity. I like the really nitty-gritty details of like telling a story. And so it was incredibly well received, and it made us feel just in awe of being there and in that company, to be honest, because all of the films we saw were mind-blowingly incredible this year.
Very nice. As a long time LGBTQ plus gathering, places continue to disappear. What do
Mhm.
you hope younger viewers understand about preserving spaces like the tool shed?
I mean, I would love to jump in real quick and just say that again, as an ally and not a member of the community, first of all, this is a space for everybody. So whether or not you identify as this or that, it doesn't matter. This is a place where if you're looking for community, you can find it there. They're very loving and welcoming. But also, it's so important, and this was what all of our subjects talked about. was the fear, the worry that they have for the next generation, that they don't necessarily know or have been taught the struggle and the journey that their generation has gone through. Um, and so they need to preserve these spaces so that they have a place where the stories are held, so that they have a place where they can learn from each other and have fun together. Like it's not they're going to go there and have a book club. It's like they're going to go there and be in community together in a very natural way. But if they're not having those conversations, there's a real risk that you'll lose all the things that they've learned throughout history and all the things that they've fought for. So I really hope that younger generations, whether they're part of the community or not, can listen to their elders and learn from them.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh,
I think too, like, oh, I'm sorry. I was just gonna say that like there is like an institutional knowledge in your body, and like I'm not a drinker. I spent years playing in punk bands, and like being in a bar feels like work to me. So I don't go to a lot of bars. And then having spent time making this, it reminded me how important a queer space is. And we just had Outfest a couple weekends ago here, and I didn't think about it until afterwards what it's like to be around people who understand fundamentally some level of your experience.
yeah.
And I've said this before, that's like, a person of color experiences racism, they can go home to their family and their family understand that experience implicitly. As a queer person, you're often born into a family that does not share your experience and your sexuality at all. So when you face oppression, a lot of times you don't have anyone to talk to about it. A lot of times it's coming from, the calls coming from within the house, it's your own family or your first bully. So being in those queer spaces are so, so vitally important. And it's great that we can all connect online. It is so wonderful. And it's such I grew up in a rural community. I think that's great that they all have access to everything now, but nothing beats face-to-face, in-person community. We are social animals and we need that vitally now more than ever.
And also, just to piggyback on all that, like, don't forget that we still need to fight for our rights. Like, I think people are kind of taking for granted that those rights exist in law. And I'm like, do you know how many things have been turned back in the last 8 months, 9 months? Like, do you know
Yeah.
how much they are coming after us, especially the trans community? And I'm like, y'all, like, we're gonna have to fight. Like, if we want spaces like this and the right to marry the people we love and tax equality and like insurance equality and like being able to pass our homes. I mean, how many people in the 70s and 80s and 90s, their partner wasn't able to get any of the benefits from their marriage or union because their families just took it all after not speaking to them for 20 years. And I'm like, we need to, I hope that they go like, the fight is not over, near over. There's still over 50 countries in the world where it is punishable by death to be homosexual. And I'm like, y'all, we are far from over and we are all connected and it affects all of us globally. And so I hope that they watch something like this and go like, oh, we need to step the F up. You know what I mean? And that we can't let our guard down because don't be lulled into thinking it's safe. It's not. They're coming for us. And this administration is certainly, you know.
I
I
love
thought
it.
about
Go
a
ahead,
lot too.
Andrew.
Sherry Galki's amazing documentary, Acting Like Women. One of the things that they talked about in those women only spaces was consciousness raising. It was the very 70s, you know, idea of sitting around and that is something that I, in my education, came up with too. And I think we need to bring that back. We need to, get together as people, talk about what we've been through as people, educate each other, and then raise everybody up. There's this capitalism makes us all pit each other against each other in a race for success, but a rising tide raises all boats, that saying, and I think that's really important that we all band together, that we're all in this together. And I think that's something that we really, really need the younger generation to understand.
Yeah.
Well, thank you three again for making this film, bringing it out here for all of us to see,
Thank you.
hopefully continuing to be international. But it was a pleasure to meet you and to see the film, and we will spread the word. We're the Hollywood Times today. The Hollywood Times Official is our YouTube channel. Have a great rest of your day and keep up the good work. Keep us posted on your future endeavors, please.
Thank you, Valerie. Thank you so much.
So much
Okay,
for having us.
great. Thank you. Have a
Yeah.
good rest of your day.
Love you guys. I'll see you later.
Bye.